Join the quest. Share your views on upcoming games. Click here. Warhammer 40k Wiki. Explore. Imperium of Man. Chaos. Xenos. Videos, games, community. Fandom. Fan Central Bitagam Saname Moviest Video. Wikis. Start a wiki. AD. Advertisement. Sign in register. Welcome to the Grim Dark. 7068. Pages. Explore. Imperium of Man. Chaos. Xenos. Videos, games, community. In P, Adepts, Aldrai. And 10 more. English. Psyker. View source. A primaris Psyker of the Astra Militarum. A Psyker is an individual of any intelligent species in the Warhammer 40,000 universe who possesses some degree of psychic ability or powers. Psychic powers are sometimes referred to as sorcery when they are gained or enhanced through interaction and bargaining with the malevolent entities who exist within the Empire Aeon. Psykers are also sometimes called witches in the Imperium of Man and among the Aldrai, particularly when such powers are used in a way that they show no regard for the dangers they may spawn for others or are used in pursuit of the agenda of the Chaos Gods. Psychic powers are sometimes referred to by the ignorant in the Imperium as magic, also spelled magic. All Psykers draw their powers from the extra-dimensional realm of psychic energy known as the immaterium or the warp that underlies and penetrates four-dimensional real space and is the source of all psychic energy in the universe. As such, Psykers, particularly human Psykers whose minds are far less disciplined and easily tempted than their Aldrai counterparts, are often in danger of possession by the demonic entities of the warp, the onset of insanity and ultimate corruption by the ruinous powers of chaos. Contents. 1 Psykers of the Galaxy. 01.1 Imperium of Man. Small black square 1.1.1 Astropaths. Small black square 1.1.2 Astra Militarum. Small black square 1.1.3 Space Marines. Small black square 1.1.4 Imperial Inquisition. Small black square 1.1.5 Grey Knights. 01.2 Craft World Aldrai. 01.3 Forces of Chaos. 01.4 Leagues of Votan. 01.5 Orcs. 01.6 Necrons. 01.7 Tyrannids. 01.8 Teor. 2 Psychic Disciplines. 02.1 Biomancy Discipline. 02.2 Divination Discipline. 02.3 Pyromancy Discipline. 02.4 Telekinesis Discipline. 02.5 Telepathy Discipline. 3 Psyker Grades. 03.1 The Assignment. 03.2 Psyker Grade Examples. 4 Witch Sight. 5 Anti-Psyker Weaponry. 6 Videos. 7 Sources. AD. Psykers of the Galaxy. Most of the intelligent species in the Warhammer 40,000 galaxy employ Psykers on the battlefield. Some of these Psykers are inevitably more potent than others. There are 3 exceptions to this: the Teor, the Drukhari and the Necrons. The Teor Empire has yet to develop any Psykers among their species because they have only recently evolved to fully sapient status. The Drukhari, though as possessed of inherent psychic ability as their craft world Aldrai counterparts, fear that the use of psychic powers only further hastens the loss of their souls to Slaanesh. The Necrons no longer possess souls since they transferred their consciousnesses into their necrodermis bodies through the process of biotransference and became creatures wholly of the physical universe like their former Cetan masters. As a result, they no longer generate any presence within the immaterium and cannot draw upon any form of psychic energy from that realm. Imperium of man. The genetic mutation which grants a human being the ability to draw upon the psychic energy of the immaterium has become increasingly common since the Neolithic age. However, what is known is that human psykers were only first mentioned in the historical record towards the end of the 22nd millennium, making a sudden appearance on almost every human settled world within a relatively short span of time, not long before the onset of the Age of Strife. This change was the harbinger of mankind's slow evolution into a fully psychic species, much like the Aldrai, who will be more intelligent, more capable and ultimately more peaceful than humanity is at present. Unfortunately, this process has been quite uneven, and even the most powerful human psykers still have minds that have not developed to the point that they can touch the warp with the level of control wielded by the Aldrai seers. As such, because of this lack of mental development and mankind's own still deeply flawed covetous nature, most human psykers always run a substantial risk of being possessed by the demonic entities of the warp and spreading the death and destruction of chaos wherever they go. It is for this reason that the Emperor of Mankind largely banned the use of psychic powers throughout the Imperium of Man, save in a few notable exceptions in 001.M31 at the Council of Nicaea during the Great Crusade. Psykers, although justifiably feared throughout humanity's history because of their extraordinary powers and the equally extraordinary dangers they sometimes unleashed on those around them, serve several vital roles within the Imperium today under several of the exceptions laid out by the Council of Nicaea some 10 millennia ago. Psykers are too dangerous to remain at liberty on the Imperium's myriad worlds. Their minds are susceptible to demonic possession, as their strong presences in the warp can serve as gateways into the material universe for all kinds of warp entities if they are weak or undisciplined with their powers. Uncontrolled, they can intentionally or unintentionally cause the destruction of entire worlds and have done so in the pre-imperial past, such as during the terrible days of the Age of Strife. Humans found to be bearing the psychic mutation, if they are not simply killed, are sent to terror aboard the infamous black ships of the Inquisition which endlessly traverse the Imperium. All human psykers have an ordained role to play as loyal servants of the Imperium if they have the willpower to control their abilities and not become a danger to others. Their exact role depends on the psychic powers they manifest and their strength of character and will. Those psykers who have some use for the Imperium are known as sanctioned psykers, while individuals who manifest unusually strong psychic powers often become primaris psykers, the most powerful human psykers in existence. Sanctioned psykers serve within the Astra Militarum and as librarians in the space marine chapters, employing their powers in battle as well as for civil duties. Imperial navigators use their psychic third eye to determine safe paths through the immaterium for Imperial voidcraft using the faster-than-light warp drive employed by all Imperial starships. Astropaths provide faster-than-light communication as their telepathy is not confined to the speed of light, since their messages travel through the warp much as starships use the warp to make interstellar jumps. Thousands of psykers who lack the mental discipline and willpower to safely serve the Imperium are sacrificed every standard year to sustain the Emperor's psychic presence in the warp, and thousands more must constantly be drained by him to power the Astronomicon, which broadcasts a potent telepathic signal through the warp, which is used as a point of reference by starship navigators. However, the Imperium of Man also ruthlessly executes countless less fortunate Psykers who are seen as mutants, heretics, potential threats to their home worlds, or gateways to the daemons and corruption of chaos. Psykers first emerged amongst mankind in the middle part of the long-distant age of technology, a period of human history about which all but nothing is remembered in the 41st millennium. Since that time, ever greater numbers of humans have been born with the ability to wield psychic powers, and others still come into such powers later on in life. This phenomenon has been the subject of study, debate, superstition, prejudice, intolerance, and even open warfare. Throughout the ages, and all manner of meanings have been read into it. Some claim that humanity is undergoing the birth pangs of a new phase in its evolution, and can look forward to an age when the species transcends to an entirely different level of existence. Most interpretations are far less optimistic, however, and those with knowledge of such things point to the fate of the ancient Ildry Empire as a warning of what doom awaits mankind. Others still hold that this gradual and ever-increasing evolution is the doing of the Emperor himself, who exists to shepherd the entire species into its new age. Those of a notably Puritan persuasion hold that for every Psyker born, 1,000 twisted mutants are spawned first, as if the process itself was abhorrent to the Emperor, to nature or to both. Whatever the truth of the matter, it is evident that more and more human Psykers are being born, or coming into their powers with every passing generation. The bleak holds of the black ships grow ever more bloated with those swept up in the Psyker culls. With this increase, the risk of demonic incursion and enslaver plague in real space grows worse, for should one powerful but uncontrolled Psyker go undetected, the slavering denizens of the warp might breach reality itself and come pouring in, bringing the doom of humanity with them. Astropaths. An imperial astropath. Astropaths, short for astrotelepath, serve throughout all the Imperium's many governmental divisions and make up a superluminal telepathic communication network designed to transmit and receive psychic messages through interstellar space. New astropaths are chosen from the multitudes of Psykers who are born across the Imperium every standard year as part of the imperial tithe and brought to Terra on the black ships due to their great power. Once chosen, astropaths receive psychic training by the Adeptus Astra Telepathica's teaching division, which is known as the Scholastica Psychana, before they are soul-bound to the Emperor. This psychic ritual transfers some of the Emperor's vast power, and more importantly, his mental control to the Psyker, by psychically rewiring a portion of their brains. Such an experience is quite physically traumatic for the Psyker, and not all survive or maintain their sanity. Even the survivors often suffer damage to their physical senses, especially their eyes, so that almost all astropaths are blind, their optical nerves burnt out during the soul binding process. Their increased psychic senses, however, tend to make up for this loss of sight, and most astropaths have the uncanny ability to see everything just as well as a sighted person despite their lack of vision. Being joined with the Emperor is necessary, as it greatly increases astropaths' already formidable powers, granting them full control over the ability for which they were chosen, the transmission and reception of telepathic messages across hundreds of light-years of space. Due to the draining nature of their job and the costs incurred by soul binding, many astropaths are physically frail and can die quite young due to sheer mental exhaustion. AD. Astra Militarum. Some of the stronger and more mentally disciplined Psykers recruited into the Adeptus Astra Telepathica are trained to serve within the Astra Militarum as sanctioned Psykers rather than as astropaths. These Psykers may draw upon the power of the warp, unleashing it upon their enemies as a weapon. They are also called upon to advise high-ranking Astra Militarum officers, though with varying degrees of success. Their limited training and equipment leads them to be more vulnerable to the perils of the warp than the much more powerful battle Psyker librarians of the Space Marine chapters. Each time a sanctioned Psyker utilizes their power, they put themselves at considerable risk, and are prone to have their minds destroyed in the process. Some Psykers in rare cases have even literally exploded from overloading their bodies with warp energy, taking out entire Imperial Guard squads nearby. That ever-present danger aside, they are still a potent force when deployed and used properly. On the battlefield, sanctioned Psykers can advise an officer and guide their command, protect him from psychic attack, or fire bolts of lightning from their hands. Despite their uses, sanctioned Psykers are at best tolerated, and at worst loathed, by their companions. They are never allowed to stray far from the ever-watchful gaze of the regiment's commissar, who can and will execute the Psyker at the slightest sign of warp taint. For the Psyker's own good. The fact that many sanctioned Psykers meet their demise at the end of a commissar's bolt pistol has earned them the dubious nickname of bolt magnets amongst the rank-and-file soldiers of the Astra Militarum. If a sanctioned Psyker manages to survive a term of service in the Astra Militarum, they will be returned to the care of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica, who will then test the veteran Psyker thoroughly for mental fortitude and psychic might. If the Psyker survives those tests, they will be trained to become a Primaris Psyker, and taught how to harness the power of lesser Psykers and make it subservient to their own. When they rejoin the Astra Militarum, the Primaris Psyker will be able to form a circle or coven with other sanctioned Psykers. With the power of the circle at their disposal, the Primaris Psykers' precognitive predictions will be more accurate, their protective wards and abjurations more potent and their psychic attacks more devastating. And yet, for all their might and utility to the Imperium, even a Primaris Psyker is not spared the suspicious gaze of the Commissar, and they too may one day find themselves executed by a bolt pistol shot swiftly and surely delivered to the back of the head. Space Marines. A Space Marine Librarian. Psykers are employed by the Adeptus Astartes in the form of their chapter librarians. These individuals are chosen from among the most powerful Psykers in the Imperium, whose abilities are then further enhanced by the transhuman augmentation provided by their Astartes gene seed. Librarians, as their name implies, are responsible for maintaining the records and histories of the chapter they belong to, hence their name, and they can also use their talents to discern which psychic mutants are dangerous and which can be utilized by the Imperium as sanctioned Psykers, astropaths, and even new librarians. Librarians, having much better equipment, a psychic hood, etc., willpower, protection and training, as well as the transhuman physical and mental genetic enhancements of a Space Marine, are much less prone to falling prey to the perils of the warp than other Imperial Psykers, and therefore do not undergo the soul-binding ritual. On the battlefield, librarians are fearsome opponents, able to unleash devastating psychic powers and psychically augment their own already formidable physical prowess. They are also skilled at defending themselves and their battle brothers from psychic attack. Imperial Inquisition. Though they are tasked with hunting down rogue Psykers and collecting latent ones for training to aid the Imperium among many other duties, many members of the Inquisition are Psykers themselves, Inquisitor Gideon Ravener being an especially potent example. Like so much about their organization, one Inquisitor's psychic abilities can vary greatly from another's. Some are pyromancers who specialize in unleashing torrents of fire and other direct psychic weapons, while others, like Inquisitor Gregor Eisenhorn, are telepaths who specialize in powers that aid them in interrogations or to fool an enemy into stepping out from cover, dropping his weapon, or any number of other subtle mind tricks. Grey Knights. The elite Grey Knights chapter of Space Marines that serves as the chamber militant of the Inquisition's Ordo Malus, the Demon Hunters, is wholly made up of Psykers. Being a Psyker is a condition for recruitment into the chapter. Due to the entire chapter being composed of Psykers, the rigorous process for becoming a Space Marine is made even more difficult, as all Grey Knight battle brothers have no memory of their past due to a required mind wipe, and many fail before their gene seed implantation can be complete. However, the difficult selection process and memory wiping techniques employed by the Grey Knights to rid their recruits of those common human frailties that the ruinous powers can prey upon to corrupt an individual has proven extraordinarily successful. Not a single Grey Knight has ever turned to chaos, despite their psychic abilities making them more vulnerable than standard Space Marines. Craftworld Ildry. Farseer Ashbel of the Asuriani. Among all the intelligent species of the galaxy, the Craftworld Ildry, or Asuriani as they name themselves, possess some of the most powerful Psykers in existence, using their precognitive ability to divine the future to shape their fate while also unleashing devastating telekinetic powers upon those that oppose them. However, the sheer power they generate when they combine their psychic strengths ensures they must be cautious to not attract the attention of chaos and the other predatory entities of the warp. They are forced to become highly disciplined and regulated in their usage of psychic power. Craftworld Ildry Psykers come in the form of either Farseers or Warlocks, the former being the more powerful Psykers of the two. Farseers will lead an Asuriani war host against the enemy and shape the course of battle with their powers. Warlocks, former Asuriani aspect warriors who possess potent psychic powers. Because they have begun to walk the path of the seer, typically serve as bodyguards for the Farseers and possess lesser, usually defensive-oriented psychic powers. The Ulthware Craftworld is said to possess the greatest number and the greatest quality of known Asuriani Psykers due to its proximity to the Eye of Terror. They can divine much further into the future and with better clarity than the Farseers of the other Craftworlds. Craftworld Iandan has a variant of Warlocks called Spirit Seers. They differ very little from their more mundane counterparts, save to guide all of those Asuriani Wraithbone constructs that are empowered by the souls of fallen Ildry encapsulated within Spirit Stones. Spirit Seers will guide Asuriani Wraith Guards in combat, better directing those Wraithbone constructs. Awesome firepower for optimum efficiency. Forces of chaos. A chaos psyker. The forces of chaos host a great many mutants among their number, including many with psychic potential. Chaos psykers, often called sorcerers, can perform various tasks such as summoning daemons and unleashing devastating weaponized psychic powers upon the enemy. The chaos god Tzeentch, god of change and intrigue, is devoted to sorcery, chaos space. Marine legions and warbands worshipping Tzeentch such as the Thousand Suns possess a large number of psykers that can aid in battle. Other traitor legions such as the World Eaters who serve the psyker-hating blood god Khorn denounce sorcery and psychic ability in favor of the wanton bloodshed of close combat. The Iron Warriors traitor legion often also sneers at the use of sorcery. Chaos sorcerers can unleash potent powers and are fearsome individuals, often mutated beyond recognition. Tzeentch worshipping sorcerers are especially potent, able to perform feats that would leave even an Asuriani farseer making sure their spirit stone is firmly within their grasp. Leagues of Votan. A Grimnire of the Great Arthurian League in battle, wielding his ancestral warding stave. Though they are a race of human clones, this does not mean that each kin of the Leagues of Votan is exactly physically identical or that the kin suffer from the common defects which can result from a lack of genetic diversity. The first ancestors who were responsible many Terran millennia ago for shaping kin society to deal with the environmental rigors of life. In the galactic core engineered a series of stable mutations and unusual phenotypical expressions into their people's genomes which they named cloniscanes. In practical terms, these alterations provide the kin with physiological enhancements over the human baseline such as denser muscular and skeletal systems to provide greater physical strength and more endurance in the face of trauma. Their bodies are capable of high red and white blood cell production to ensure the kin possess more efficient respiratory systems that enhance their capacity for rigorous work and an immune system that is more effective at combating the effects of ionizing radiation common to the galactic core. There are many cloniscanes that were intended to provide specific physical benefits to those kin that possess them. These include enhanced reaction times beyond those available to baseline kin, the ability to see into the infrared and other electromagnetic spectra beyond visible light, increased resistance to extremes of temperature, gravity or ionizing radiation, and many other enhancements that aid navigating the turbulent environments of the core. Such genetic alterations also manifest in the phenotypes of those kin who bear them, again giving the lie to the idea that just because the kin are all clones, they are also all identical. Such expressions include an unusual color of the skin or eyes by human standards, altered subdermal layers displaying various craggy surfaces or ridges on the cranium or elsewhere on the body, unusual odors and similar cosmetic changes. These differences do not breed prejudice or other forms of discrimination among the kin, who view them as the marks of valuable abilities and enhancements to the capability of the kin to work or defend themselves. That they were intended to be. Alterations were also made to the kin's mental acuity and psyches through unknown means, such that they are far less able to make use of the powers of the immaterium or be affected by its unnatural denizens. Even those kin who carry the psychoactive cloniscane are not literal psykers in the true sense of the word as humans would understand it. Like a shuttered lantern whose aperture has been opened a little wider, the souls of these psychoactive kin shine just brightly enough to mesh with barrier tech that makes use of the energies of the Immaterium, such as ancestral warding staves and armored crests that can project Psyker-like abilities. The kin's physical and mental hardening has made them much less prone to the physical mutations brought on by exposure to the energies of chaos. And possession by daemons or a kin's corruption by chaos are also blessedly extremely rare. The kin are highly resistant to the exercise of any powers upon them that draw upon the energies of the warp. The downside, or some might claim the advantage, of this psychic hardening is the lack of true psychers among the kin, for whom that mutation simply does not exist. Additionally, such psychic alterations also seem to have contributed to the conservative, stoic and deeply stubborn nature of most kin. In place of the Psyker mutation, the first ancestors provided the kin with a specialized clonisgene that expresses itself among the Grimnaya, the living ancestors who serve as the kin's primary link with the wisdom of the Votan and are the closest analog that these highly secular people have to priests. These bearers of the psychoactive clonisgene are the only ones able to activate the advanced barrier technologies that the leagues do possess to allow limited interactions with the warp. Orcs. Too much noise. Too much. I think IZ Gunner, Warg. Weird boy Gazrog. An orc weird boy about to unleash the power of the Warg. The orcs are an innately psychic species and they unconsciously generate a considerable amount of psychic background noise, a psychic energy field known simply as the Warg. This field of gestalt psychic energy grows more potent and more intense as the number of nearby orcs increases and as the orcs themselves become more excited, particularly during battle, creating an almost palpable tension that accompanies orc hordes. Weird boys are the psychers of the orc species, absorbing the energy of the Warg and expelling it in violent surges of luminescent green power. Weird boys have little control over their abilities, and as the potency of this energy increases with the number and enthusiasm of the orc boys around them, so does the power that a weird boy must endeavor to control. Even when they manage to contain this violent and erratic force, bizarre phenomena commonly accompany weird boys, ranging from flashing lights and strange noises to psychokinetic tremors and random fires. Should they fail to disperse, direct or emit this psychic energy in some controlled manner, a weird boy may cause even more dramatic phenomena, such as the explosion of nearby orc heads. This is known as Aid Bang when the power is not discharged safely. Weird boys are also found in feral orc armies, where they are known as wire boys. Warfeds are those weird boys that, unlike normal weird boys, have survived enough battles for their minds to become saturated with the power of the warp, and actually revel in and enjoy the use of their powers. Necrons. The Necrons cannot make use of Psykers because, though a once living species, they chose to have their living consciousnesses interred by the Cetan into Necron machine constructs, composed of necrodermis for immortality at the cost of their souls. Since a soul is simply an individual's psychic imprint on the Immaterium, the Necrons are no longer capable of accessing its psychic power. The Necrons are now living machines, beings of pure material like their masters who leave no impression on the Immaterium. The Cetan are described as creatures entirely born of the material realm, and thus they cannot sense or influence the warp in any way. Thus they hate and fear the Immaterium and all things strongly connected to or influenced by it, such as Psykers. The Necrons are notable for utilizing technology specifically designed for destroying Psykers. Most prominently the Necron Pariahs. Necron Pariahs are an elite bodyguard that terrify any Psykers in their proximity, since no member of this group possesses a warp signature and thus a soul. These Necrons, all of whom were once human psychic blanks, share the Pariah gene. In common with the Imperial assassins of the Kilxus Temple of the Officio Assassinorum, and both groups are the soulless victims of the insertion of the gene millions of Terran years ago into the proto-human gene pool by the Citan in the hope that they could be used as living weapons against the Old Ones and their psychic servant species like the Ildry. The Citan would sooner feed off the thermonuclear power of a sun than deign to consume a single soul with its foul taint of warp energy. Hatred of the psychic does not bar some contradictory evidence about the Necrons' use of psychic abilities, as seen when the Necrons emitted a fear-inducing telepathic ability, from which the Commissar Ceophas Kane was saved only because of the presence of a psychic blank with the Pariah gene in the vicinity. Tyrannids. The alien species of the Tyrannids is one of the most psychically active races in the galaxy, if not the most, with every single Tyrannid telepathically connected to all other members of its species through the psychic gestalt that is called the hive mind. It is suspected that this constant and massive psychic traffic is what causes the shadow in the warp, a phenomenon that makes warp travel and astrotelepathy almost impossible in the vicinity of a large Tyrannid hive fleet. Though the lesser Tyrannid bioforms have no psychic abilities of their own, the larger Tyrannid warriors act as focal points for the hive mind called synapse, creatures capable of mind controlling all of the lesser Tyrannid bioforms around them. Zoanthropes, creatures supposedly created by combining Tyrannid DNA with genetic material from other psychically active species like the Ildry, are extremely powerful Psykers. Their bodies have devolved into little more than a massively bloated head attached to an atrophied fetus-like body incapable of even moving on its own power, therefore requiring the creature to use its psychic abilities to levitate across the battlefield. Hive tyrants are also very powerful Psykers, although not as powerful as zoanthropes, and act as the core of the hive mind within the Tyrannid swarms. Larger Tyrannids, such as dominatrixes and the mysterious Norn Queens, are also Psykers of immense power, though the full extent of their abilities is a matter of speculation within the Adeptus Mechanicus. Teor. The Teor have no known Psykers. In the video game Warhammer 40,000, Fire Warrior, it is revealed that the Teor are naturally resistant to the mutating effects of chaos, having almost no psychic presence in the warp at all, though they are not soulless like the Necrons. However, this did not prevent the Teor Ethral, Ko-Vash, from being blasted apart by a burst of chaos energy. It is rumored that the Ethrals are capable of utilizing warp power, as it is suggested that this is how they are able to cause such loyalty to the greater good in all of the Teor. However, it has been discovered by Adeptus Mechanicus researchers that the members of the Ethral caste possess a large, diamond-shaped, scent-emitting organ in their forehead, which may allow them to control other Teor through the emission of pheromones or some other biological means, rather than the use of psychic abilities. Psychic disciplines. Although the powers of Psykers are many and varied, they usually fall into one of several disciplines. The 5 most common psychic disciplines are biomancy, divination, pyromancy, telekinesis and telepathy. Each discipline has a particular character, which is reflected by the powers within it. The telepathy discipline, for example, is grounded in mind control, and its powers act through compelling and influencing the thoughts and actions of others. It should be noted that, whilst two different psychers may both use the same discipline, their powers are likely to manifest in unique, idiosyncratic ways. So for example, an imperial psyker using the pyromancy discipline may hurl blazing bolts of fire shaped like an avenging, two-headed eagle, whilst a corrupt chaos sorcerer might conjure multi-hued conflagrations of living warp fire, and an orc psyker or weird boy could vomit cones of billowing green flames. Many of the other alien species and even different imperial factions psychers such as Astra Militarum Wyrdvan psychers and Primaris psychers or Space Marine librarians also have access to their own unique psychic disciplines and powers beyond what is listed here. Some psychers specialize in only one discipline, honing a few powers to the exclusion of all others. Others manifest a much broader range of psychic disciplines and abilities. In such cases, the psyker will be able to generate powers from several psychic disciplines. Biomancy discipline. Biomancers specialize in manipulating biological energy and metabolic processes with the power of their minds. They are masters of the flesh, learning to shape and influence the physical forms of themselves, their allies or their enemies, according to their will. Smite, lethal bolts of biolightning leap from the psyker's fingertips, tearing their foes apart. Iron arm, by transmuting their flesh into living metal, the biomancer can wade through enemy fire unscathed and pulp skulls with their bare fists. Enfeeble, as the psyker channels their powers, tendrils of warp energy lash over their victims, every caress sapping vitality from their bodies. Endurance, reaching into the metabolic essence of their allies, the biomancer knits together bones, heals flesh and banishes fatigue so that they carry on the fight. Life leech, with a twist of their gnarled hands, the wrathful psyker rips the life force from their enemy, hoarding the stolen essence and using it to reinvigorate and restore their own injured flesh. Warp speed, the powers of the immaterium flow into the psyker, heightening their speed to supernatural levels. A blur is the psyker amongst their enemies, felling the unrighteous with blows too swift to see. Hemorrhage, focusing their mutant mind, the psyker reaches forth and sets a fire within their victim's flesh. Within moments, the unfortunate foe's blood begins to boil in its own veins, tearing them asunder as it bursts from every pore. Divination discipline. Diviners seek to discern the hidden past of the galaxy and know the course of events yet to come. These abilities allow diviners to look into the twisting strands of the immaterium in search of the answers they seek, and sometimes even influence the outcome of fate itself. Prescience, the psyker can effortlessly predict the paths of bullets and swords alike. By focusing their witch sight even more closely, they can guide their allies' aim, bringing a swift and merciless death to their foes. Foreboding, thanks to their warp-gifted insights, the psyker and their allies are aware that their foes are about to charge, even before the foes themselves have realized it, allowing them to prepare a staunch defense. Misfortune, with a click of their fingers, the diviner twists fate so that their followers' melee blows and ranged weapon shots punch through the weakest points in their opponent's armor. Perfect timing, as soon as their consciousness pierces the veil of the warp, a rush of images floods the diviner's mind, foretelling the actions of their enemies, down to the merest microsecond. Armed with this information, the diviner's allies can predict exactly when their foes will peer out from behind cover and expose themselves to a lethal headshot. Precognition. Having already witnessed the one true path to victory, the diviner strides across the battlefield like an avenging god of war. Whilst the premonitions run true, they are all but undefeatable, proof against bullet and bolt, blade and bombardment. However, should their self-wrought prophecies fade, or turn false, they will surely be doomed to ignominious defeat. Scryer's gaze. The diviner can see the whole battlefield clearly in their mind's eye, with the vantage point of a hunting hawk and the precision of a laser. The to and fro of armies and war machines is but the scurrying of ants beneath their omniscient gaze. Thus can the diviner direct exactly when and where they and their allies are most needed to turn the tide, leaving no clue behind as to how this trickery was achieved. Pyromancy discipline. A pyromancer is a master of fire and flame, a psyker who is able to create searing infernos out of thin air powered by the energies of the Empire Eon. Pyromancy is one of the most spectacular and destructive forms of psychic ability, and those who face a skilled pyromancer in combat are oft reduced to naught but a pile of charred bones. Flame breath. A torrent of psychically generated flames pour forth from the psyker's eyes and mouth, engulfing the target. Fiery form. Bullets and shells pass straight through the pyromancer as they transform into an incandescent being of living warp fire, striking out at their foes and setting their souls ablaze. Fire shield. With a sweep of their arms the psyker throws up a towering wall of flame to protect their allies. Spontaneous combustion. Focusing their anger, the pyromancer can melt or incinerate their foes in a heartbeat. Yet when their rage boils over, the unfortunate victim's body explodes in a blast of ash and roaring flame. Who can say how many will fall victim to the pyromancer's wrath before it is sated? Sunburst. The psyker sings a wild song whose notes were old when the universe was young. As they do so, an incandescent aura appears about them, growing ever brighter and hotter with every refrain. Only when the song is ended does the aura explode, discharging its pent-up fury in a blinding, supernoval flash. Molten beam. The pyromancer claps their hands together and turns them outward towards the foe. As they do so, a white-hot beam of blazing energy bursts from their palms. It melts armor to slag and vaporizes flesh, leaving only ghastly shadows in its wake. Telekinesis discipline. Telekins are able to manipulate the material world with the power of their minds, translating sheer mental power into physical force. These psykers can lash their foes with psychic energy, erect invisible force shields to protect themselves and even rend apart the fabric of reality. Assail. Using nothing but the power of their mind, the psyker tears a boulder or rock from the ground and hurls it at the foe. Crush. By reaching out their arm and clenching their fist, the psyker entraps their foe in a choking and crushing mass of psychic force. Gritting their teeth, the psyker continues the assault until flesh, armor and bone alike are ground to powder. Gate of Infinity. The psyker punches a corridor through the roiling immaterium, allowing them to cross great distances in the blink of an eye. Abjuration Mechanicum. Weapons jam and engines seize up as the telekin uses their powers to wrench and twist the inner workings at the hearts of nearby machines. Shockwave. The psyker slams their palms together and the noise is magnified 100-fold. releasing a sonic shockwave of pure psychic force that snaps bones and knocks foes off their feet. Telekin dome, bullets bounce off of thin air and are deflected alarmingly towards enemy forces as the Psyker erects a barrier of shimmering psychic energy about themselves. Vortex of doom, the Telekin opens a tear between the material realm and the howling destruction of the warp, unleashing raw psychic energies that utterly consume his foes. Telepathy discipline. Telepaths are psychers whose mental expertise lies with contacting and controlling the minds of others. With a single thought, a telepath can blast away their foe's sanity, induce states of numbing terror or possess their victims' thoughts and mold their actions as if they were the psycher's own. Psychic shriek, the psyker breathes in deeply the power of the warp before emitting a banshee howl of psychic energy that shreds the minds of their enemies. Dominate, the psyker reaches into their foe's mind, trammeling their soul and crushing the enemy's will to fight on, utterly dominating their psyche. Mental fortitude, despair is turned into fresh hope and courage into insane heroism as the telepath projects inspirational thoughts of victory into the minds of their allies. Puppet master, the telepath possesses their victim's mind, controlling their movements, their aim and their trigger fingers as if they were marionettes. Terrify, even the bravest of heroes quake in terror as the telepath assails them with images from their own darkest and most dreadful nightmares. Invisibility, reaching into the minds of their foes, the psyker obscures themselves and their allies from the enemy's visual line of sight. Hallucination, paranoia, confusion and panic are heightened to a debilitating degree as the telepath alters their foes' perceptions of reality, creating fearful visions, confusing or befuddling the enemy, or even generating the belief that their fellows are the true enemy. Psyker grades. The assignment. A rogue psyker consumed by the power of chaos. One system employed by the Imperium to quantify the power of psychers, called the assignment, uses different grades to incrementally rank Schnick activity and the power level of a psyker. Comprised of a 24-point scale based on the ancient Greek alphabet, the assignment simplifies the comparison of psychers to aid imperial authorities like the Adeptus Astra Telepathica, the Sisters of Silence and the Inquisition in recognizing possible threats. Psychers exist within many of the intelligent species of the galaxy. Human psychers, Craftworld, Aldrai warlocks and seers, as well as orc weirdboys, are all psychers of this type. Beings such as the chaos daemons of the warp are actually composed of pure psychic energy. There are also some species like the Teor, who are completely devoid of psychers or the ability to touch the warp directly and thus project psychic powers. There even exists beings who could be called antipsychers, including human blanks and necron pariahs. Due to their existence within many of the military forces of the Imperium and their relative abundance among the Imperium's many enemies, the Adepta Astra Telepathica devised a way to classify all the psychers it might encounter, which over the centuries developed into the assignment used in the 41st millennium. The average member of Homo sapiens is judged to have a grade of Rho or Pi on the assignment. These individuals cannot consciously or subconsciously draw power from the Immaterium and cannot become demonically possessed without being acted upon by an outside influence of the warp. As the vast majority of humanity still possesses no psychic ability, the average imperial citizen poses little psychic security threat to their fellows. Nevertheless, rare individuals are born every day on human worlds with assignment ratings exceeding pi. By imperial edict, these men and women are to be discovered and brought to the attention of the Inquisition and the Adeptus Astra Telepathica to protect the rest of humanity against the possible harm they might do, including going renegade or becoming possessed. With the multitude of threats that assault the Imperium on a daily basis, however, it is only truly practical for the Inquisition to investigate those suspected of iota-level psychic power or greater. In the rarest of all cases, the 24-point scale of the assignment does not adequately characterize a being of truly indescribable ability, such as the Emperor. Such individuals, for all intents and purposes, pass beyond the ability of the scale to quantify their abilities entirely. These subjects are classified as belonging to A+ or reversed scale, since the standard assignment grading's naming convention is reversed. When uncontained, plus grade psychers represent an immediate and catastrophic threat to the Imperium. In theory, there is nothing that a trained plus psyker cannot accomplish through force of will, from snapping a titan in half to summoning a legion of greater daemons. A rogue plus psyker represents a terrible danger to humanity, and the Ordo Hereticus of the Inquisition considers them among the greatest threats they must face in protecting the Imperium from the threats within its own population. The souls of plus psychers are poetically said to burn akin to a supernova within the Empire Aeon, a blazing beacon for those daemons that flock to such individuals in the hope of being able to breach their defenses and possess their unguarded but incredibly potent minds. Although rarely used, the precise terminology for a negative psyker or blank carries a minus symbol as a suffix. An antipsyker of omega grade is thus properly called an omega minus psyker. The assignment's individual rankings are indicated below, ranked from the least powerful to most powerful, top to bottom. The numbers in brackets illustrate a relative order of the qualitative terms, with 0 denoting an individual who is psychically inert, such as the average human in the Imperium or a member of a species like the T, or that lacks all psychic ability. Negative numbers indicate negative or minus psychic levels, and numbers with a plus indicate the plus grade of psychers so powerful they are essentially unable to be truly graded by the scale. Omega minus, -7, omega minus grade psychers are actually the antipsychers, usually referred to as untouchables or blanks. These individuals are so inert in the warp as to actually exhibit a negative psychic influence upon others. This primarily manifests in real space as a region of blankness, hence the name, surrounding the individual, where psychic powers will not work. It is impossible for psychic powers or entities native to the Immaterium to penetrate or affect this space. Imperial science has learned that the psychically inert region surrounding the omega grade subject even interferes with natural bioelectric function in an organic brain. This neurological effect on others often results in the development of the irrational fear and loathing that baseline humans nearly always display towards blanks. This can even manifest in psychosomatic effects, such as thinking that the blank emits a highly offensive odor. For psychers, however, the sheer presence of a blank produces excruciating physical and mental distress. Psi-6, this grade of the assignment, which actually includes Psi through Sigma grades inclusive, represents individuals who are oblivious to fluctuations in the warp and are immune to psychic probing by a telepath. The range of this ability varies, with the highest class at sigma grade being deemed blunt or resistant to some psychic effects, and the lowest grade of psi being extremely resistant to the effects of psychic power, yet still capable of being affected by an extreme degree of psychic strength. Chi, -5, see above. Phi, -4, see above. Upsilon, -3, see above. Tau, -2, see above. Sigma, -1, see above. Rho, 0, an individual at rho grade is incapable of manifesting any psychic abilities, but can be fully affected by them or other manifestations of warp energy. This is the grade that encompasses the vast majority of humans in the Imperium and serves as the baseline grade of the assignment. Pi 1. Pi grade is the second of the two so-called inert psychic levels. Individuals ranked at Pi grade possess a minimal degree of psychic power that allows them to be sensitive to the fluctuations of the immaterium. The manifestations of this ability are so insignificant that if they happen to be noticed they are quickly denounced as good luck, or a pretension to a sixth sense on the part of the individual. These individuals are unlikely to be capable of being possessed by warp entities. Omicron, 2, at this grade of the assignment, which includes grades Omicron through Kappa inclusive, the individual displays an unconscious and minor level of psychic brain activity. These abilities produce no truly noticeable effects on the individual or their surroundings, and most psychers of this grade are unaware of their status unless put to a full examination by an expert skilled in discerning psychic ability, usually another psyker. Although psychers of these grades are still legally under the jurisdiction of the Inquisition and the Adeptus Astra Telepathica, it is logistically impossible to examine every individual who might meet this grade of the assignment across the galaxy, as the danger such individuals represent to humanity is minimal. Psychers of this grade generally never even learn that they possess any abilities at all. 11.3, see above. Nu, 4, see above. Mu, 5, see above. Lambda, 6, see above. Kappa, 7, see above. Iota, 8, at grades iota through eta inclusive, the psyker begins to display various extrasensory powers and is fully aware of their abilities and how they can alter their environment using warp energy. Psychers of these grades, however, are only able to control their abilities with some effort. All psychers of iota grade and higher are considered true psychers by the Adeptus Astra Telepathica and upon discovery are immediately turned over by their world's planetary government as part of its tithe to the Inquisition and the League of Black Ships for transport to Terra. Theta, 9, see above. Eta, 10, see above. Zeta, 11, psychers of grades Zeta and Epsilon inclusive are powerful psychers who can manifest their abilities without significant effort and would represent a great danger to humanity were they to be possessed by a warp entity. However, should they possess the mental fortitude and undergo proper and rigorous training, they can become sanctioned psychers, primaris psychers, or even space marine librarians, and thus provide good service to the Imperium. Epsilon, 12, see above. Delta, 13, psychers of grades Delta through Alpha inclusive are extraordinarily powerful individuals, and such abilities manifest in only 1 out of every 1 billion human births. In the Imperium, such psychers represent a primary threat to humanity if they go rogue or become possessed, but if they possess the willpower and receive the training needed to control their abilities, they can become psychically gifted inquisitors, primaris psychers, or the greatest of space marine librarians. Gamma, 14, see above. Beta, 15, see above. Alpha, 16, see above. Alpha plus, 17 plus, Alpha plus grade psychers represent the first of the plus scale. Psychers and are generally synonymous with that extraordinary level of psychic ability. They almost always display some level of neuroticism or even outright insanity as a result of their constant connection to the warp. Should an Alpha plus psycher go rogue or become possessed, they represent a threat that can destroy entire worlds or even star systems. Beta plus, 18 plus, the Beta plus grade is considered the greatest level of psycher power that a normal human being can achieve and still retain any semblance of sanity. Although such mental stability is usually rare and almost always rapidly degrades once this level of power fully manifests, such individuals are almost always targeted for liquidation by the Inquisition once identified. Gamma plus, 19 plus, Gamma plus represents the greatest level of psychic power ever recorded being displayed by a normal human. It is more widely achievable by some unspecified Xenos species and greater daemons of chaos, however even those entities are not known to exceed this grade in power. Delta plus to Epsilon plus, 20 plus 21 plus, the Delta plus and Epsilon plus grades are only theoretical levels of psychic power that exist within the scale but have never actually been measured by the Inquisition or the Adeptus Astra Telepathica. Zeta plus, 22 plus, Zeta plus grade is another solely theoretical grade of psychic power that is considered by the Adeptus Astra Telepathica to be the highest level of power organic neural tissue of any species could actually express without disintegrating. Eta plus to Omega plus, 23 plus 40 plus, at these only theoretical grades of psychic power. The Adeptus Astra Telepathica believes that advanced psychic technologies or other psychically resonant structures or constructs would be needed to assist an organic brain in channeling such a flow of warp energy and even to maintain their survival. Such power could alter reality on a galactic scale. The psychic power the top 4 grades represent is immense. Even a Delta-level telepath can read the minds of all the people in a good-sized town simultaneously, or crush a man to death against a wall in solar seconds if they are also a telekin. High-grade psychers are extremely powerful, and not to be taken lightly. Beta plus grade is the highest level of psychic power that a normal human can attain and still be considered even remotely sane or cognizant of reality. Any Alpha plus grade or higher psyker, however, is a being of almost grotesque power. They are described as being able to turn a man inside out with a glance, snap a battle titan in half with a flick of the wrist, and a muttered syllable can turn an army upon itself in a frenzy of blood lust. They are capable of destroying entire worlds, sometimes unintentionally. Psyker grade examples. There is some controversy as to whether the depiction of psyker power levels explored above should be taken as an objective description of the alpha level of psychic mastery, or if it is intended to be read as imperial propaganda, and just the exaggerated view of the generally anti-psychic authorities of the Imperium. The alpha-grade psyker Esarhaddon is powerful enough to control hundreds of imperial citizens as puppets, but he is not described as being powerful enough to destroy a battle titan, and was eventually subdued. However, there are very few alpha plus psychers that can be controlled safely, or even at all. Because more powerful psychers attract proportionally more interest from warp-bound daemons, many are driven insane, tainted by chaos, or even become possessed. Examples include the Apex Twins, who were responsible for murdering scores of Astra Militarum regiments. They are one of the biggest threats the Inquisition has to face, and are one of the grave dangers to mankind that the Ordo Hereticus was formed to combat. Most such psychers are executed, as the threat they pose is simply too great to deal with or control to any large degree. The Inquisitor Gideon Ravener was known to be an Alpha Plus Psyker, but was later downgraded to the grade of a powerful Delta or weak Gamma. The Emperor of Mankind would be considered an Alpha Plus Psyker, though in fact his power is so great that it probably cannot be measured by any mortal scale. An example of a beta-grade Psyker is Sergeant Agunsarik, an Imperial Guardsman who served in the 1st and only Regiment. He was able to detect blood poisoning in a fellow trooper. But his most prominent power was his ability to write messages to himself, which were contained in a brass message shell. Even after throwing the shell away, he would soon find it wriggling in his pocket, containing a message written in his own handwriting. At first the messages contained advice or warnings, but soon began to include criticism as he began to realize what he was, and the danger he posed as an untrained psyker. He eventually admitted his abilities to his regimental commander Ibram Gaunt and was taken by the Inquisition's black ships. He was later revealed to have become the sanctioned psyker of the 51st Cadogus Armored Regiment, and was able to use his abilities to manifest from the warp the ghosts of dead Tanith soldiers. Most notably, he created a ghost of the Cadogus Regiment's Major Birenson and his aide, who the first and only thought to be a normal soldier rather than a warp echo. Birenson was later killed in a Valkyrie crash. When Commissar Hark, who was also involved in the crash, told the colonel of the 51st Cadogus that Birenson had been killed, the colonel replied that Major Birenson's Valkyrie had actually been shot down en route to meet with the Tanith first 5 solar days before. Agunsarik was later mercy killed by Commissar Hark, but told Hark before his death that what he had been using his ability for was to inform the troops of the Tanith first that Colonel Commissar Gaunt was still alive. He had been captured and tortured by the forces of the Blood Pact. The Imperium has at times employed a different system of measuring psychic ability, where an individual's psychic profile is represented by a decimal value, presumably from 0 to 1, instead of using the Greek alphabet system employed by the assignment. Which sight? A latent psyker suffers from the visions offered by his witch sight. Every psyker of every intelligent species possesses the ability known within the Imperium of man as the witch sight or witch sight. Because psykers draw on the power of the Immatrium for their abilities, they can see the corona of psychic energy that surrounds every living being in real space. For sapient beings, this means being able to glimpse the nature of any psychically unshielded person's psyche, their psychic aura in ancient Terran terms. Every psyker's mind interprets or experiences this information differently based on the nature of their own cultural and psychological constructs. However, the one constant experienced by all is that individuals whose psyches are riven by the darker, more selfish emotions and motivations appear in which sight as degraded, demon-like monsters, while those of the opposite persuasion appear as pure or even angelic beings. Psychic blanks are those rare individuals who possess no presence in the immaterium and thus are immune to being affected by psychic abilities, such as those humans who inherit the pariah gene. When seen by which sight, the perception of a blank usually causes an adverse, almost painful reaction in psychers, since they do not possess an aura of any kind and therefore register as psychically disorienting, essentially blank space in the fabric of reality, hence their name. Aldrai psychers are known to possess much more penetrating witch sight than even the most powerful of their human counterparts. Anti-psyker weaponry. Several types of anti-psyker weaponry have been developed by the Imperium, Necrons and other advanced species to counter psychers. For the Imperium, these include the Kilxus assassins and their psych-out weapons, which have devastating effects on psychers. Weapons particularly effective against enemy psychers include the Psychonon, war swords, force weapons, psych-out grenades and the use of other psychers. The Necrons developed the Blackstone Kadian pylons that, once their network is complete, will completely separate the warp from the material universe, thus rendering psychers powerless, but also resulting in the slow, listless deaths of nearly every mortal race that possesses souls. Something the soulless Necrons need not fear. On a smaller scale there are the human blanks like the Sisters of Silence and the Kilxus assassins, who are soulless and therefore severely debilitating to nearby psychers. Lastly, the Drukhari, while not having any known psychers among their ranks, have developed weapons designed for psycher destruction to be used against their hated Asuriani counterparts. One of the most gruesome, and rare, is the Crucible of Malediction, a nightmarish device which contains the essence of a slain Asuriani psyker tortured into insanity. When the Drukhari use this weapon, the psyker's tormented soul is released and its power has the potential to consume any psyker on the battlefield as their minds are overloaded by the psychic cacophony of anguish. Videos. Warhammer 40,000 Grim Dark Lore Part 2, The Golden Age. Warhammer 40,000 Grim Dark Lore Part 3, Old Night. Warhammer 40,000 Grim Dark Lore Part 4, Rise of the Emperor. Sources. Chapter approved 2003, Feral Orcs, pp. 4-10. Codex, Assassins, 2nd edition, pg. 24. Codex, Assassins, 3rd edition, pg. 5. Codex, Chaos Daemons, 4th edition, pg. 20. Codex, Imperial Guard, 5th edition, pg. 33. Codex, Imperial Guard, 2nd edition, pg. 78. Codex Imperialis, 1st edition, by Rick Priestley, pp. 36-37. Codex, Leagues of Votan, 9th edition, pg. 12. Codex, Necrons, 3rd edition, pg. 17. Codex, Orcs, 4th edition, pp. 36-37. Codex, Space Marines, 4th edition, pg. 17. Codex, Space Marines, 5th edition, pp. 56-57. Codex, Space Marines, 6th edition, pp. 80-165. Codex, TOE, 3rd edition, pg. 7. Dark Heresy, Ascension, RPG, pp. 40-41, 124-126, 128-134, 152, 170, 178. Dark Heresy, Blood of Martyrs, RPG, pp. 10, 17, 21. Dark Heresy, Core Rulebook, RPG, pp. 74, 158, 160, 246, 248, 251, 273. Death Watch, Core Rulebook, RPG, pp. 182 to 200, 246, 264. Here We Go, Orcs in Warhammer 40,000, First Edition, pp. 50 to 55. Horus Heresy, Collected Visions, pg. 38. How to Paint Space Marines, Supplement, pg. 46. Index Astrates, Volume I, Digital Edition. The Inquisition, Background Book, pg. 67. Insigniam Astartes, pg. 42. Realm of Chaos, Slaves to Darkness, pg. 213. Rogue Trader, Core Rulebook, RPG, pp. 48, 154 to 155, 303, 309. Rogue Trader, Into the Storm, RPG, pg. 199. Rogue Trader, The Navi's Primer, RPG, pp. 3, 48 to 63, 104 to 107, 130, 143. The Horus Heresy Book 1, Betrayal, Forge World Series, by Alan Bly, pg. 21. Warhammer 40,000, Rogue Trader, First Edition, pp. 133, 147 to 148. Warhammer 40,000, Rulebook, Second Edition, pg. 72. Warhammer 40,000, Rulebook, 4th Edition, pp. 94, 123, 125. Warhammer 40,000, Rulebook, 5th Edition, pp. 104, 124. Warhammer 40,000, Rulebook, 6th Edition, pp. 138 to 139, 165, 177, 404, 418 to 423. Warhammer 40,000, Rulebook, 7th Edition, Digital Edition, pp. 275, 279, 320, 328, 541. 543. Warhammer 40,000 Rulebook, 8th Edition, pg. 41. Warhammer 40,000, Dark Millennium Rulebook, 2nd Edition, pg. 4. Warg. The Orcs, 1st Edition, pp. 30 to 31. White Dwarf 123, US, Orc Army List, Here We Go. Preview pp. 26 to 69. White Dwarf 124, US, Here We Go. Preview, Weird Boys pp. 46 to 58. White Dwarf 134, US, Orc Warbans in Advanced Space Crusade, Weird Boys pp. 66. 75. White Dwarf 140, UK, Space Fleet by Jarvis Johnson, Andy Jones, Simon Forrest and Rick Priestley, pp. 46 to 75. White Dwarf 145, US, Renegade, a 5-part campaign for Space Crusade, campaign. Background, Librarians, pp. 10 to 25. White Dwarf 166, U.S., Space Marines, Codex Imperialis, Librarians, pp. 8 to 19. White Dwarf 171, UK, Dark Millennium, Warg, Vehicles, and Psykers, Adeptus Astra Telepathica Powers pp. 8 to 13. White Dwarf 193, US, Dark Saviors, Dark Angels Characters, Ezekiel, Grand Master of Librarians, Keeper of the Book of Salvation, Holder of the Keys, pp. 91 to 95. White Dwarf 227, US, Chapter Approved, Dark Angels, Ezekiel, Grand Master of Librarians, pp. 73 to 80. White Dwarf 258, US, Index Astats, Psyker Librius, Space Marine Librarians. White Dwarf 326, US, Psyker Librius, Space Marine Librarians in Warhammer 40,000, pp. 76 to 89. Atlas Infernal, novel, by Rob Sanders, Act 3, Canto 2. Flight of the Eisenstein, novel, by James Swallow. Thousand Suns, novel, by Graham McNeill. Prospero Burns, novel, by Dan Abnett. Tales of Heresy, anthology, The Voice by James Swallow. The Outcast Dead, novel, by Graham McNeill. Caves of Ice, novel, by Sandy Mitchell. Faith and Fire, novel, by James Swallow. Heroes of the Space Marines, anthology, Headhunted by Steve Parker. Eisenhorn, omnibus novel, by Dan Abnett, Xenos, pg. 334, Malus, Chapter 7. Raven a Rogue, novel, by Dan Abnett. Warhammer 40,000, Fire Warrior, video game. Warhammer 40,000 roleplay, Imperium Maledictum, images. Expand Raven Rock videos. Categories. Languages. Community content is available under CC-BY-SA unless otherwise noted. More fandoms. Fantasy. Sci-fi. AD. Recent images. Abriel's Claw. 2 hours ago. Abriel's Claw. A day ago. Abriel's Claw. A day ago. Others like you also viewed. Emperor of Mankind. Immatrium. Space Marines. Warhammer 40k Wiki. Imperium of Man. Primarch. Aldrai. Chaos Gods. Perpetual. Popular Pages. Primarch. Emperor of Mankind. Blood Angels. Space Marines. Space Marine Legions. AD. 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 Explore properties. Fandom. Mutheed. Fanatical. Follow us. Overview. What is fandom? About. Careers. Press. Contact. Terms of use. Privacy policy. Digital Services Act. Global Sitemap. Local Sitemap. Community. Community Central. Support. Help. Advertise. Media Kit. Contact. Fandom apps. Take your favorite fandoms with you and never miss a beat. Warhammer 40k Wiki is a fandom games community. View mobile site. Follow on TikTok Yuan Fan Lab. Search this wiki. Search all wikis.